Hello there, my Brony and Pegasister friends. Today I'm going to tell you my headcanon story of the origins of Queen Chrysalis. This is basically a reading of a fanfiction I have written on the subject, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy as I weave this tale of love and corruption. Oh, and by the way, you might not understand a lot of this video and the backstory that surrounds this ancient world unless you have seen my Celestia Luna in the History of Equestria video. The link to that will be in the description. Now let's get started. 3, 2, 1, begin. Poison of the Heart by Inkrose. Princess Chrysalis of the Western Insect Kingdom, mistress of pollination and the guardian of honey, was a unique ruler to be sure. She had ruled her subjects fairly and with small amounts of kindness, but there was much more to her than that. In fact, many of the other alicorns of the world did not approve of her. After all, she was a master potion brewer like most of her subjects, but she used the potions she created for selfish purposes. She changed bits and pieces of her appearances with them, never quite satisfied with her looks. But there was much more to her use of potions than that. In fact, her magical concoctions would change the course of her life forever. Blaze Vulcarius was a proud prince of volcanoes. His great magic controlled spewing mounds of magma and smoke all over the world. On this particular day, he had been invited to the Western Insect Kingdom for a royal luncheon with Princess Chrysalis. He had brought his whole entourage, and as they entered the kingdom, their jaws dropped in wonder. The city was filled with Pegasi, but not those from most lands. These were a special breed with insect-like wings and the capabilities to pollinate and perform tasks of other various insects, almost like breezies. Speaking of insects, the city was very heavily populated with them. Flocks of butterflies nested on trees, dragonflies zipped over ponds, and ants collected food from special patches laid out just for them, and bees flew from flower to flower. All of the buildings were made of either giant plants and flowers, large honeycomb structures featuring live bees, termite-like mounds, or huge carved-out tree stumps. The city was truly a sight to behold. It was nothing compared to the castle, though. Giant mossy stone walls made of uncut boulders fitted beautifully together, and gigantic swaths of honeycombs made up the castle. Its grandeur was well earned. After all, it was the main hub of this side of the world for pollination and honey-making. Blaze Vulcarius stepped into this very castle, his magma mane casting brilliant light onto the semi-translucent honey cascading down the entry hall's walls. It was there that he first saw the gorgeous Princess Chrysalis, her insect wings flapping gently as she touched down on the ground in front of him. "Welcome to Honeycomb Castle, my dear," she said in a calm tone. "I have been looking forward to your visit for quite some time." Blaze stared for a moment at his hostess's magical mane. It seemed to be made of pure honey, dripping from the top of her head to the ground, and yet disappearing before it could make too large of a puddle. It was certainly one of the most intricate alicorn manes he had ever seen. Blaze redirected his eyes toward Chrysalis's face. "It is an honor to be here, Princess. I have also been looking forward to meeting you," he said politely. The two made their way throughout the castle, eventually coming upon a long dining table raised from the ground, made of glass-covered honeycomb. Chrysalis nodded at one of the cushions at the end of the table, and Blaze promptly sat there. Chrysalis sat at one end of the opposite side of the table. Blaze's guards stood near him, eyeing Chrysalis and her guards warily. With a wave of her horn, the most succulent and delectable of foods began to float down from the ceiling, where busy servants cooked within their own respective honeycomb cubicles. The foods gently landed upon the table, giving Blaze a chance to look at the meal set before him. Bread with strawberry honey, white and red rose petal salad with nectar dressing, and sweet-smelling field grass cakes were only a portion of the wonderful foods served at this table. Blaze and Chrysalis talked and laughed together as they ate, sharing tales of their adventures as well as daily tasks. Once the meal had been finished off by both parties, Chrysalis stood, using her magic to bring out 2 small wine glasses from behind her, as well as a glass bottle filled with a strange purple liquid. "Before we discuss political matters in the other room, my dear, "Let us toast to the betterment of our kingdoms," she said with a beaming smile. She set one of the glasses in front of Blaze and the other in front of herself. Uncorking the bottle, she poured a good amount of the purple liquid into both glasses. Blaze looked down at the frothing concoction. It smelled particularly strange, and the bubbles, were they in the shape of hearts? Blaze didn't really want to drink it, but he did not wish to be rude either. So as Chrysalis raised her glass and began to drink, so did he. As soon as the questionable liquid slid down his throat, Blaze dropped his glass, the cup shattering on contact with the floor. He groaned, feeling dizzy and nauseous at the same time. He put a hoof to his stomach and cried out. His guards leapt into action, pointing their spears at the princess and demanding to know what she had done to the prince. But with a simple wave of her horn, Chrysalis had every pony in the room besides her and Blaze frozen in place, as if they were statues. She gave a small smile as she looked at the writhing Blaze, his face contorted in pain. She took a small sip of her nectar tea and looked him in the eye, his enraged look staring back. "Ah, you're a tough one, aren't you?" she said. "It usually does not take this long for the potion's effects to take hold." She took another sip. "What have you done to me?" Blaze managed to croak before he suddenly became stock still. His eyes glowed a bright purple. From his mouth came a wisp of magenta smoke. Chrysalis too exhaled this smoke, and the two whispers met together to create the shape of a heart, which quickly dissipated into the air. Blaze blinked, his eyes no longer glowing. He grinned. "I love you," he said simply, his eyes dead set on Chrysalis. He could not tear his gaze away. "Oh, you are so lovely. I love you so much." A smile crept its way onto Chrysalis's lips. "Good," she said. It was then that Chrysalis began to talk with the prince, telling him that she would only love him back if he agreed to tell her certain pieces of confidential information about himself and the kingdom he ruled. He readily told her these things, his mind in a spellbound stupor. The interrogation lasted a couple hours, Chrysalis combing Blaze's mind for every snippet of information he had. Once she was satisfied, her horn flashed brilliantly as she used her magic to quickly whip out an antidote to the potion, forcing it down the love-stricken prince's throat. She also simultaneously unfroze every pony in the room, wiping their memories of what had happened. They all still believed that the dinner had just been coming to a close. Chrysalis painted a fake smile across her face, saying her goodbyes to the prince as she strode out of the castle. Her smile faded when he was gone, a small smirk replacing it. She ordered her personnel out of the room. Once the room was empty, Chrysalis waved her horn. The large, solid honeycomb table before her grinding on the floor, cogs and gears beneath the floor turning in unison to pull the table to the side, revealing a staircase leading down into a dimly lit passage. The princess descended, her posture straight and her head held high. The passage was a spiral staircase and led down to a huge room filled with a great many different things. A large cauldron was the centerpiece of the place, its great black mouth craving for liquids to be poured within it. Surrounding the cauldron were stacks of not only tomes and scrolls, but jars large and small, holding strange contents. Adorning the walls were bulky shelves littered with even more books and jars. There was even a huge wall whose shelves contained only bottles and potions, which were carefully labeled and organized. Chrysalis made her way to the center of the room, hearing the grinding of the gears above her signaling that the table was shifting back to its original place, hiding the passageway. She stood before her cauldron, muttering to herself as she activated her magic, taking a bucket full of water and dumping it into the cauldron. Next, she opened a jar full of the glow of a rainbow near her and poured its shining contents into the gaping maw. A large tuft of cloud was next, its fluffy mass sinking into the rainbow-colored concoction. A few other things were added here and there. Soon the princess's project was almost complete. Her eyes glancing around the room, Chrysalis took an extremely large blue feather from an umbrella stand full of the things. She set the feather into the potion, half submerging it. Next, she stirred the potion with it. The contents of the pot slowly turned to a deep purple. Satisfied with her handiwork, Chrysalis took several empty bottles from a shelf and poured the potion into them, emptying the cauldron. She sealed the bottles and put them away in a locked safe. She was done for the night. Extinguishing the candles lighting the room, Chrysalis exited the underground place. Little did she know, a pair of anxious eyes watched her leave. Prince Farthing was the ruler of a tiny earth pony village nestled between the Western Insect Kingdom and Dragon Cave Mountain. He was a decent ruler, though could be a bit dense at times. His one true desire was to find love, but unfortunately the mayors of his own town were less than beautiful and quite poor. No, Prince Farthing was seeking one of royalty, like him, and one day when he visited the Insect Kingdom nearby, he found his true love. There she stood, on the balcony of the castle, her glowing golden mane like honey, and her eyes leaf green. Yes, Princess Chrysalis was the mayor he wanted to marry. Over the next few months, the prince tried over and over to see the princess, but no matter what he did, the guards never let him in, and the princess never responded to his letters asking for a meeting. It was as if he wasn't important enough for her. He assured himself this wasn't the case, though. Who wouldn't want to be wed to the prince of Tiny Farm Village? Surely she must have just been too busy to answer his letters. And so the prince watched for her every time he visited the Insect Kingdom, gazing at her whenever she stood on the balcony high above. But one day, all that changed. Prince Blaze of the Volcano Kingdom was visiting the castle, and Farthing realized that this could be his chance to get into the castle and see his love. The servants' door in the back of the castle was being constantly used, servants going to and fro between the outside and in, bringing in foods to prepare for the Volcano Prince's visit. Farthing put on a disguise, masking his royal body with servant garb, and slipping through the servant door undetected. The kitchen was buzzing with servants. They stressed over the meal they prepared, making sure everything was perfect. As the food was served, magically enhanced plates being let down from the ceiling of the dining hall, Farthing scrambled to get a better view of the princess. He eventually found a hole in the ceiling that no pony was using. His heart bursting at the seams, he gazed down at his precious princess. It seemed like she was the only one in the room, her shining eyes a pinpoint of light in an everlasting darkness. Farthing sighed and leaned on his hooves, his eyes blinking slowly. He could just sit there forever. Chrysalis suddenly stood up and took out a bottle of something. She poured a cup for herself as well as one for her guest. But something was wrong. As soon as the guest drank the liquid, he looked sick, as if he was about to collapse. Farthing squinted his eyes, trying to see better from his view high up. Havoc broke out in the room, the guests' guards leaping into action. Chrysalis's horn lit up, and... "Hey, what are you doing in here?" Farthing whipped around to see the head chef, an angry look upon his face. The chef grabbed Farthing, taking him away from the hole in the roof. "You don't work here," he cried. "I recognize every pony who has a job in my kitchen, and you certainly aren't one of them." Farthing winced, the gears of his mind whirring. "I'm new," he said, smiling. "Just hired, since they needed more help with the preparations for Prince Blaze's visit." Farthing internally held his breath, glad he was a practiced liar. The chef narrowed his eyes. "Well, we don't pay you to sit around gawking at the diners. The princess requested that all personnel be vacated out of the kitchen at this point in the dinner. Now you better—" Someone called for the chef in another room. He cursed under his breath, heading for the room. "Now get out," he called to Farthing before he went out. Farthing shrugged off the pony's instructions, looking back down into the dining room below. His eyes widened as he noticed that every pony in the room save Chrysalis and her guest were frozen, their bodies held in various positions. Farthing strained his ears to hear the words of the ponies below. "Oh, you are so lovely. I love you so much," said Prince Blaze, his eyes glued to Chrysalis. "Good," said Chrysalis, her large smile visible even from the high ceiling. Farthing let out a silent gasp. No, he would not let this fiend take away his future lover. He gritted his teeth as his ears lay flat against his head. But wait! Farthing looked at what was left of the liquid Chrysalis had given Blaze. All of it had been drunk. And as Farthing looked back at the prince, he noticed that something was not quite right. His eyes were glazed over, their 1,000-yard stare fixed on Chrysalis. His stature was as straight as a board, his body unmoving. Was that liquid? Some kind of a love potion? Chrysalis began to talk with Blaze, asking him all sorts of questions about the secrets of his kingdom. Blaze responded obediently, answering everything she asked, as well as frequently pleading for a kiss. An answer dawned on Farthing's simple brain. She had given her guest a love potion. Farthing put a hoof over his mouth in shock. And she was using it to gather government secrets from powerful individuals. By harmony itself, Farthing thought. He was now more in love with her than ever, and he suddenly had a plan to get her all for himself. Chrysalis eventually finished her questioning, and proceeded to cure Blaze of the spell's effects, unfreezing everyone in the room as well, wiping parts of their memories, and saying goodbye to everyone, leading them out of the chamber. When she thought she was alone, Chrysalis performed magic on the heavy table before her, making it so that a secret passage lay before her. As she slowly descended the passage stairs, Farthing quickly snatched an enchanted plate near him and hopped on it, using it to descend quickly to the floor below. He ducked into the passage just as the table slid closed. Farthing quietly followed a safe distance behind Chrysalis, watching her enter an underground room filled with potions and glass bottles. Quickly ducking behind a nearby shelf, Farthing gazed at Chrysalis as she sat in front of a huge cauldron, filling it with all sorts of things. Farthing kept a small checklist in his mind, keeping track of the ingredients Chrysalis poured into the cauldron. Once Chrysalis had finished, she filled a couple bottles using all of the potions she had brewed and stuck the bottles within a safe. Farthing's eyebrows rose as she locked the safe. He knew that must have been the potion she had given to Prince Blaze. He needed to get some. It might be the only way I can get her to love me, he thought. The only way we can be together. Chrysalis left the potion-making room, trotting up the stairs and sliding the table shut on top of the passage. Farthing came out from behind the shelf, his skin prickling in anticipation. He finally had a real plan to get Chrysalis to fall in love with him. The pre-made potions Chrysalis had made were locked away, so Farthing decided to try to recreate the recipe. Farthing tried as best as he could, mixing in rainbow glow, cloud tufts, and stirring with the feather. However, what he had failed to do was water the mixture down as Chrysalis had done. The potion was a bit thick and altogether much too powerful. Now, Farthing knew many things about his princess's schedule. After all, he was practically obsessed with the pony. He remembered that every morning she took a fresh glass of orange juice to go with her honey on toast, and in his simple mind the cogs and wheels spun as they never had before. Farthing searched round the room, eventually finding a bottle of yellowish-orange dye. He dumped it all in the mixture, adding some orange juices in to make the potion smell like orange juice as well. Once he was done, Farthing put some of the potion in a large glass bottle and tucked it in the small saddlebag he had brought. Now he had to find a way to get out of the potion room. As he searched for an alternate exit, Farthing stumbled upon a chart pinned to the wall. Curious, he began to read. It was a calendar of sorts, with different measurements of liquid assigned for each day. The title of the calendar read, Love Potion Immunity, Intake Amount. Chrysalis had been helping herself grow immune to the potion. That was why it had not affected her when she had drunk it alongside Prince Blaze. Farthing grimaced. This was not good. However, as he stared at the calendar, the words of his wise old grandmother came to him. Go big or go home! Farthing smiled. That was it! He could just give Chrysalis a ton of the potion. That would surely work. Hours later, Farthing finally found an alternate exit leading out of the potion room, which led to the outside of the castle in the garden. The dashing prince of Tiny Farm Village patted the bottle of potion within his saddlebag. Everything was going perfectly.